For the first question for this discussion board, which asks how the grading process will work in my future classroom, I think the most important thing that I can say about this is just to keep students on the same page as you and to keep them in the know. It doesn't help anyone if you're not keeping up with your grades and the students don't know what's going on. They don't know where they are in the class. They don't know where they need to get, where they are. So I think just keeping up with your grading as it's happening, and post. Now it's so easy to post grades online. Most schools have that type of resource available. So keeping up with those grades online as they're happening, in quick time, so that just so that students can know where they're at and what they're doing. I think it'll be recorded on those online things, on those online databases, so students can always see where they're at, and there can also be in my future classroom some sort of, besides just letter grades or point systems, also keeping them updated with some sort of descriptions, letting them know how they're doing, whether that means posting that online or taking the time to pull aside each student, maybe once a month, once a semester, whatever the time allows, and just talk to them and let them know so that they're aware where they're at and if they need to change something or if they're doing great, just giving them that encouragement. Effort and knowledge are both incredibly important to the education process. I think often effort is hard to judge, but as a teacher, that's sort of your job to pay attention to a student's potential and see if they're meeting that potential and see if they're really doing everything that they can in a situation. For me, I want to be an art teacher, and so effort is a huge part of that because you cannot necessarily grade a student on their talent or their skill. That's just not how it works, especially in an elementary setting like that. So I think in order to see how much effort students are putting in, you just have to pay close attention to them. You have to get to know them as learners. You have to just be very present in the classroom and kind of, see if a student happens to be talking to their friend the whole time and maybe remind them, just to stay focused on their work. Things like that. That just show that the student is trying, because ultimately that's all they can do. Like I said, especially in an art classroom situation. Knowledge, I believe, should be tested. Not always in the form of assessments. There are other ways, I believe, to do that are less, that put less pressure on the kids to just memorize. That could be games, that could be just applying their knowledge through maybe an art project or any sort of project. I feel there are various ways to test knowledge, and I think those need to be weighed maybe not equally, but close to equally, effort and knowledge. And then behavior as well, I would say, is part of the effort portion of a student's grade in most cases. I think having behavior be a weighted portion, whether that's 10% of their overall grade based on participation, based on teacher observations, or something less formal, just whether maybe a 1 to 5 scale on their behavior each month averaged out, or something like that. It's just something to take into consideration that shows the students that is important, that is something that they need to pay attention to, and behavior is everything in a classroom, and it can really affect the whole classroom dynamic. So just making sure that students know that good behavior is important definitely should be part of their grade, because that'll make them care about it. I'm answering the question, what procedures would you establish in your classroom to help support classroom management? I think primarily what is really important to do is to just establish things in the very beginning of the year when you first get your students, and make boundaries and rules and like kind of set the tone for your classroom very early on. Because if it's unclear to students in the beginning, then it'll be hard for them to learn their way. And if that's not fair to have a certain expectation of them, as far as behavior and like how they are in your classroom, if you're not making that perfectly clear to them. Certain procedures that I might establish would be like point systems for behavior. So you could be, on a certain level if you're behaving well, you move down to another level if there's an issue, or like warnings. And then also, like we previously talked about, definitely like rewards and punishments for certain behavior that are made very clear, and having incentives that are like worth it for the students, that make them want to respect that environment and want to help create a classroom with good behavior, and all that comes with that. I think other ways to support classroom management would be to include students in the process of, I don't want to use the word discipline, that sounds more harsh than I mean, but sort of make it a community environment rather than you as the teacher saying, you do this, you do this, you do this. So that could look like allocating tasks, like someone who's in charge of taking out materials at each table, someone who's in charge of cleaning up a certain thing, or someone who decides what order you're doing everything in that day. So just giving the students a sense of control, which is ultimately yours, but giving them kind of that sense that they are participating and they're not just being told what to do, so that they feel included in the classroom and they feel like it's a safe, comfortable environment for them that makes them want to behave, not where they feel like they have to behave. Because if a child is feeling like they're being sort of shut down or controlled in a classroom setting, they're not going to want to do as you're asking them. They're just going to kind of probably rebel. It depends on the student. But I think just making sure that they feel included in the process of classroom management is huge, and can make all the difference, definitely.